Our next guest is a professor at York University, specializing in the study of media, children, education, and the impact that children's media has had on young viewers nationally and around the world. Please welcome to the program, Natalie Coulter.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
It's nice to be here.
We're going to put uproarious applause in post. You can say hi to all of Canada and whoever's streaming this. You are, I need to pick your brain. I have a 5-year-old son about all things programming and what kids are absorbing these days. But today we're going to talk about moral messaging and PSAs in animation.
Great.
And I mean, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so that for me was like my direct exposure to that special part of Inspector Gadget. You know, I used to watch all sorts of cartoons where if it wasn't already so ingrained in the storyline, there was definitely a moment after the show was done where it was like, don't talk to strangers, don't stick your fingers in that outlet, you know.
Eat
and
your
it
vegetables.
Was, yes, exactly. What was it about that era where we just, I feel like we're in a constant moral panic?
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
Yeah, I think that's a really great observation. I mean, the 1980s are a particularly important moment in children and children's media because it's really when they changed the regulations around children's media and opened up the opportunities for characters on children's media to be also products. Before that, you couldn't have characters on children's media that were also products, which is why we have, things like serial characters who don't have their own shows, like Toucan Sam and Tony the Tiger, and these sorts of things. So they had to be very separate. But in the 1980s, they changed the regulations in the United States, which had a massive ripple effect across North America and the rest of the world in terms of children's media and entertainment. And they allowed commercials and products, so characters on commercials and products to be the same.
Let's roll.
So it was a radical change. So if you think of something like Strawberry Shortcake, I mean, Strawberry Shortcake was basically a 22-minute commercial for Strawberry Shortcake products, right? So you could buy the Strawberry Shortcake dolls, and you could buy the Strawberry Shortcake house, and you could buy the Strawberry Shortcake stroller and the bike and the bedding, and they became basically commercials. So I think for these companies, these TV shows that were basically companies, they had to look like they were doing something good. So what they did was sort of making sure that they were unfolding education kind of messages in it, that there was a moral message, that they were doing something good. They weren't just companies selling toys.
Products. They were selling moral messaging
and
keeping you out of jail at such an age.
That's right. Strawberry Shortcake could tell you to brush your teeth. And I mean, I love the Care Bears because they are all about emotion. So every PSA was about some sort of emotional behavior, right? Be nice to people, learn to share with Share Bear.
I feel like that kind of thing for me, you know, being a parent now, like that's the kind of stuff, behavioral stuff versus like, you know, don't try this or don't do that. Because I feel like, I don't know, you're a parent as well.
Yes,
Did you ever have that experience where it's like, and even growing up in the era too, having seen it yourself, like, were there side effects to like telling someone directly not to do that? And then of course they go ahead and do that. I mean, I'm not the kind of parent that's gonna be like, I found that bag of crack under your bed. I'm gonna sit here and watch you do that whole bag of crack. So I'm not gonna do that. But you know what I mean? Like there are some parents that are like, go and get the boo-boo, go and make those falls and learn that way. Like, what are the ups and downs of learning both sides?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, one thing I think the kind of moral messaging they have are super simple, right? They're not complex, and they also don't lead to any other wider governmental regulation issues. So telling you to brush your teeth, like, no company is going to say, you know, wait a minute, you're upsetting the toothbrush industry or the dental industry, right? So they're really simple, easy messages that fit within what the kind of commercial marketplace wanted, and didn't lead to broader sort of issues. And I think for kids, they're really easy things just to pick up. And for parents, it's a really simple message that they could feel like these shows are doing something good. So Care Bears is about giving a good message, but they also really want you to buy all the Care Bears.
Of course, I was going to say, there's still, there is definitely an underlying connection that's a secret, not so secret, relationship between the commercial world and that of like moral messaging and education for kids.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I remember there being an episode of Muppet Babies where I believe Fozzie, who actually play on the modern take
Oh,
of
cool.
Waka Waka, where Fozzie
Yeah.
Bear had like a toothache and didn't want to go to the dentist. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, they tell you that it's okay.
right.
Nothing to fear. They definitely give you the animated drill with Muppet eyes jump scare. Like, oh my god.
And now, Fuzzy, it's time for the drill. Open wide. Oh no!
I'm gonna get half of my head drilled because I have a cavity.
Yeah.
But then you're like, oh, okay, you walk away with a balloon and your tooth is fixed, and you tell your friends, and everyone wants to go to the dentist at the end of the episode. And then, of course, as a kid, I begged my mom for the Muppet Babies toothbrush.
Right, yeah.
Which, at the end of the day, you're getting your kids to brush their teeth,
Yeah.
as they should.
Yeah.
And I guess it's not that bad. You're going to buy a toothbrush.
Yeah.
I guess it's up to your parents if they want to spend or save an extra $1 on having the Muppet on the toothbrush.
Right. And children's media has always done that. I mean, even just stories about, fairy tales or radio stories or comic books is about helping kids normalize, deal with the experiences that they're going to deal with, right? I mean, that's what kind of all children's media has done for probably a really long time. I don't know how long.
I was going to say, I mean, it's obvious. It's eye candy for kids. Cartoons, Roblox, video games. It's all eye candy for kids. But why have it there and not in schools and not like in the household, where I'm sure it does exist, but like, I guess just to make sure it's on all fronts, wherever the kids' eyes are going, you got to make sure that it's there. I mean,
I think that's part of it. I mean, I do think that, as a parent, you might be a little more open to letting your kids watch TV. If you see the moral message at the end, you're like, oh, okay. So it's a way to kind of placate parents, maybe not put so many limits on their screen time if they know they're getting something good out of it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they didn't talk about screen time in the 1970s and 80s the way we do now, but definitely, there were concerns about kids watching too much TV. When the regulations changed, there was a lot of people that were really against this, right? That had really fought to kind of keep children's media separate from commercials. So I think that these kind of moral panic kind of PSAs being attached to commercials were a way to kind of, give a little nod and wink. It's all going to be okay.
Again, looking back, we've had the PSAs in Inspector Gadget. They were definitely there in G.I. Joe.
Anyone can have an accident, but lying makes it worse.
But Mom will be upset.
She'll be even more upset if you lie. And how would you feel if Billy got punished?
Of course, Care Bears, about emotions and feelings and how you treat your friends.
Yeah.
If you had shared it in the first place, you'd both have some now.
Not so much Saturday morning cartoons, but even Saturday morning programming, like Saved by the Bell. There was always that moment where the lead character is sitting on the desk, staring right into the camera about a problem that a character was having on the special after-school special episode. Which is, I feel like we're in a constant moral panic.
So when you actually think about what a moral panic is first deciding on a problem, and then amplifying that problem and sort of illustrating why that problem is a bigger problem than we should be concerned about. Once you sort of do that, then the solution becomes either more surveillance, or the solution becomes a way to distract from broader structural issues. So I think that PSAs in the 1980s were very much about sort of amplifying the problem as an individual problem, right? Amplifying the drug problem as an individual problem, because it's about people not being able to have the moral ability to say no, to abstain.
Hey, you guys want to try some dope?
No.
No!
So then it justified, the massive amounts of money put on the war on drugs. So you have the expansions of prisons, they become privatized, they become massive industries, they need to fill these prisons. So that if the emphasis is put on the individual, it kind of justifies these larger politics of arresting people because they themselves didn't say no, they failed, as opposed to thinking about, kind of supports that people would need.
One puff and they'll soon be in my grasp.
But when you think about anti-smoking campaigns,
not so fast, nicotine.
To make it a problem for young people is a way to sort of distract from it being a problem from older people. And the tobacco companies knew this, so the tobacco companies gave lots of support and lots of help to the anti-smoking campaigns because it made them look better. It made them look, like that they were doing these altruistic things. There's actually research on this, and tobacco companies were really aware that if you told kids not to smoke in a way, it was kind of made smoking cool because
Right.
it's anti-establishment, right?
They want to rebel.
Totally.
When you tell like, a kid, no, don't do that, the first thing they're going to do is try it.
I mean, another good example is all the sort of PSAs that were about stranger danger, right? That the danger was sort of being abducted by these strangers. But we know that for most kids that are in danger, it's the home. So we didn't have PSAs that were, telling kids about how to deal when you yourself are dealing with sexual assault in your home or you were dealing with abuse in the home. Yeah. But instead, the messages is always just don't get into a car with strangers. Be careful of the stranger. And this is a great example of like if the PSAs were really about keeping kids safe, they would address really
probably the majority of the things that are happening.
The much bigger issue than not to say
stranger
kids,
danger doesn't exist.
Yeah, and not to say kids should get in cars with strangers. I'm not saying that, but it's the stranger danger that gets exaggerated, and this is a perfect example of a moral panic. It's the stranger danger. It's the kid getting picked up by the stranger. And of course, these things do happen, but those are the ones that get exaggerated to a much greater extent than the fact that the stories about kids, dealing with abuse in the home, those are made invisible, right? That's not something. And then there's sort of not a lot of social supports for that. That's kind of being eroded and cut. But the emphasis becomes the stranger danger. Again, the individual who has to say no to getting into the car with the stranger, right? As opposed to thinking about kind of broader structural issues that affect kids and their families and their homes. If you think of anti-smoking campaigns, to make it a problem for young people is a way to sort of distract from it being a problem from older people as well, I think.
Yeah, hey, old people don't know everything.
Yeah.
they don't know all the answers.
Yeah.
There should be more older audience-targeted PSAs these days. I feel like some people just don't learn their lesson and learn the hard way, unfortunately. I know the creator of Family Guy, Seth MacFarlane, recently came out with almost like a throwback to moral messaging with his characters on Family Guy and the vaccine.
God, I hate getting shots. Why do I gotta get this stupid COVID vaccine anyway? Peter, it's COVID. You should know how to say it. It's been well over a year. Yeah, I only ever read it.
It's basically like, educates people that are not in the know about the vaccine and what it actually does, and kind of clears up any kind of misconceptions about it with Stewie and Peter Griffin. So who are you going to get advice from? Your doctor or Peter Griffin?
That's amazing.
Yeah. Hopefully Seth doesn't cancel me for doing his voice.
So the more quickly we all get vaccinated, the more quickly we can all get back to doing the things we love safely. Right, like that chick at the bowling alley.
Yeah, I was thinking of, like, concerts.
It kind of doesn't really exist that much anymore. We're not necessarily hitting our younger viewers over the head with these messages anymore. And why do you feel that is?
I would say my answer to that would be, I think that, just the messages have changed and become a little more complex. I think kids are incredibly media savvy, so things like that seem really simplistic. I mean, I would say that very much as a sign of the times of how we like our media stories, right? So I would say that these kind of PSAs are better than they were in the 1980s because I feel like TV content is better because we're all much more sophisticated than what we consumed in the 1980s. But I loved it in the 1980s, right? Sure. I thought this stuff was great.
Sure.
I think that there's lots of great kids shows out there that do have these kind of messages embedded in them that, lots of kids take value. I can't imagine what kids' content would be like without some sort of moral message somewhere, sometime.
Sure. Do you think that there is room or a possible comeback for these?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think sort of good moral messages would be ones that are sort of separate from industry and not actually public relations campaigns. So at the end of the day, when we tell stories, if you really pull it apart, lots of our stories have messages and meanings and morals in them. So, I think it's how overt they are often, but, embedding a moral message into a cartoon is a little bit less obvious than a PSA. That's very eat your vegetables.
I won't listen to a puppet tell me to eat my vegetables.
Yeah.
When my doctor says it,
then
I will listen.
But when my parents say it, there's no way.
You know how many eggs I didn't eat because of this is your brain,
I know, there you go.
Get the picture?
Yeah.
It's like, or maybe it made me want to have eggs.
Yeah.
I don't know. Say no to eggs. Well, thank you so much for
really
spending time with us. And I think we're all smarter because you're here.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.